Trades are happening. Let's talk about what has gone down in the last however many hours it is. Michael Bolton, I'm sure you have not been traded. Just play out your no trade clause.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I'm thinking of growing my hair into a Sam McClure-like ponytail. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky, joshlloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there is no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to fanduel.com to get started. Also, check out lockedondaily.com. Sign up for a free newsletter, but also tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, and if things is popping off and I am awake, I'll go earlier on that. So just keep an eye on the thing. The live link is in the description on the audio side here. It's in the description on the YouTube side. You'll see a pin to the front of the YouTube page. 1 p.m. Eastern, going live, maybe earlier. Be ready for it. I will tweet that out if I do happen to go earlier, just depending on if I'm up and what stuff is going down. So normally on today, which is my Thursday, your Wednesday in the States, I do a waiver wire show. I'm not doing that today because why? I've been telling you to save your moves. You've saved your moves. There's no point in me saying, well, these are the most added play. It doesn't matter. All right? It doesn't matter at this point. We're looking at the trades, and this stuff is going to be inconsequential come tomorrow. I'm also not going to do a Thursday preview show today because, again, no point. Because we could have 15, 16, 20 teams involved in trades of rotation players, and those games on Thursday then become highly impacted by that, and any sort of advice or streaming or what we're watching for is completely useless. So we're not doing that, right? So that's not happening today. Tomorrow, there is the live trade deadline show, and then there will be a larger full trade breakdown show later in the day. That's it. We'll do it live, react, and then there's the time where I sit down, I go through projections, and we really sort of knock stuff out. That is all happening tomorrow. Today was to do the recap show of Wednesday's games, but I'll also, you probably know this already, I'm going to try to do a live mailbag show today after I record this show. So that's just an idea of where we're at with the action in the NBA. It is International Frozen Yogurt Day today. So have one of those. If you've got the choice between frozen yogurt and ice cream, you're always going to go with ice cream, of course. But, today's the day to celebrate frozen yogurt. So that's what we're going to do. We'll celebrate the old Frogut. I am very confused by stuff in the NBA, and it does appear that, we'll talk about this one now, that this rumor idea of this three-way trade yesterday, Kevin Durant to Golden State, Jimmy Butler to Phoenix, Andrew Wiggins to Miami, was the thing that was everyone gaining momentum. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was like, why would this be happening? But there was a lot of momentum behind it. That seems dead now because KD's like, bro, I don't want to go to Golden State. What are you talking about? I don't want to go back there. So that's not happening apparently. But I wouldn't... The idea and the rationale behind it. So some of this stuff I feel like it just gets made up. It gets put out by agents. It gets made up by other people in media, whatever. I think there's so much stuff that gets made up with this. But the reasoning behind this idea was, well, the Suns can't find anybody to take Bradley Beal, right? Beal doesn't want to go anywhere. He doesn't want to waive his no trade. He doesn't want to go, so they can't do that. So our only option is to trade away Durant to get him Butler. No. Your option is to not get Butler. Why is that not an option? You know who's a better player? Kevin Durant. You know who's less of an injury risk? Kevin Durant. You know who's less of an asshole? Kevin Durant. But we probably, just because we can't get rid of Beal, we probably just need Butler in here. So we've got the privilege of paying this man $60 million a year to be terrible. Terrible's a relative term, obviously. The insanity of like, well, I guess we've got to move on from Durant then if we can't do it with Beal. No, you just don't need Butler. I don't know. It seems a novel concept. Why would you make your team worse now and in the future? Insanity. Like I don't get what's happening in that sort of respect. Speaking of making your team worse, Milwaukee and Washington executed a trade. The Bucks send out Khris Middleton. They send out first round surprise pick AJ Johnson. they send out a first round. There's a first round pick swap involved in that as well, which is going to favor the Wizards. The Bucks receive future MVP Kyle Kuzma. They receive Patrick Baldwin Jr. and a second round pick. Again, Khris Middleton has had health problems. We know this. Always something in ankle and knee, all that sort of stuff. He's much better of a player than Kyle Kuzma is. And I know that there's going to be, but what about the money? What about the salaries? All this stuff. And that is true, right? That is true. Because the Bucks making this move does bring them below the second apron and allows them to do other deals, allows them to now aggregate salaries in trades, which they weren't allowed to do prior to that. So that enabled them to do this salary aggregation trade. This is stuff that they couldn't do with the salary before, with where they were in terms of the apron. So I get that part. But if they don't do anything else, they've just made their team worse. They just have. Kuzma is an incredibly overrated player. Incredibly. He is someone who has been, honestly, one of the worst players in the NBA this season. And he was one of the worst players in the NBA last season. That's all relative, of course, based on role and minutes and that sort of stuff. Because, there are players, David Roddy, who play limited minutes and they're terrible. But in terms of guys that play a lot of minutes and have high time on the court, there was almost nobody worse than Kuzma this year or last year. So if your aim is to get under the second apron, congratulations, raise a banner. If your aim is to win, well, unless they do something else with this added flexibility, they've gotten worse, I think. I think they have clearly gotten worse. Which, again, is part of the idea of the Butler-Durant thing. Why are we actively trying to make ourselves worse? Let's take a look at some of the impact stuff from this deal. The Bucks, right? This is how I see it. Now, I know that this is going to be a controversial opinion. And it already is, because I've tweeted this out, and I've put it onto Instagram as well. I think that, as much as I think Kyle Kuzma is not a very good player, I think this makes Kyle Kuzma's fantasy value rise. And I'll explain it. You can think about why that I would think that, and what your gut reaction is. I want to know that. Also, if you're in here on the YouTube, you're in the live chat, or you're in the comments below, do you think that makes Kyle Kuzma's value rise? Please, let me know in terms of what your gut reaction is. And then after I explain it, give me your reaction after that. Kyle Kuzma goes from a spot where he was the number 2 usage player, equal number 1 with Jordan Poole. He had these weird games where he would play 29 minutes and have 5 points and barely shoot it. He never gets steals or blocks. That's not changing. He goes to a situation where the ball will not be in his hands anywhere near as much in Milwaukee. That is true. He was able to get some assists in Washington. He was able to take a lot of shots in Washington. He was able to be incredibly inefficient in Washington. He's not going to all of a sudden become a defensive menace in Milwaukee. None of that is going to happen. Why does his value go up? Well, 2 things. I don't think there's going to be these random games where he plays 28 minutes because they're getting smashed by 40 points. Number 1, you're going to have minutes consistency. The guy that he replaces in the starting lineup will be the amino acid Taurean Prince. So he moves into that role, so he won't have these random 29-minute games. Glenn Rivers might play him 36 a night. So there's a bit of a minutes boost potentially. And he will see absolutely lower usage. He will see lower assists. I'm very certain of that. It won't be necessarily bolstered by defensive stats. There might be an efficiency rise. That is true. And I think he will take more threes than he did in Washington, because he's back 2-3 years ago, he was a 40% 3-point attempt rate, not percentage, but attempt rate. And he was down to about 32, I think, this season. So I think his threes might go up in that role. The major reason why Kyle Kuzma's value goes up is that we don't have to worry about a fake injury now. We don't have to worry about random 24-minute-a-night runs. We don't have to worry about weird benchings. We don't have to worry about less effort. We don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I'm not saying that he's going to be good, but the offset in usage, I think, is actually buttressed by the fact that he might play 5 extra minutes a night, and he might play 50% more games. It's simple as that to me. He goes from a spot where I didn't have any trust that he was going to play down the stretch. I was worried about calf, shoulder, ankle, knee, dick, whatever injury was going to happen. I was worried about it there. Plus the random you take 2 shots game, the pissing and moaning, the 20% shooting nights, the cavalier attitude. I worried about all that stuff. I don't now. Do I think that he's good? Of course I don't. Absolutely not. He's terrible. I think he's really bad. I think it's a terrible decision by Milwaukee. But for fantasy, that level of uncertainty is gone. I don't have that worry that he's going to be fake injured. I don't have that worry that he's going to have a 1 of 12 shooting night or just keep shooting and go 3 of 20. I don't have that worry at all. I think we're good. So that is why. If I'm talking per game, yeah, absolutely I believe he drops. Even though I think the minutes increase might help. But yeah, per game I think it drops. But if I'm talking where we're trusting it for the remaining 7 weeks of the season, I feel much better about it. The other guys, well, everyone else I think loses value. Now, Dame and Giannis, untouched. Not worried about them. Fine. All good. Brook Lopez, pretty solid. Not worried. Punch Bob has to lose value. Now, he might be getting traded himself, Bobby Portis. I don't know. But part of the appeal of Portis was, that's a lot of P's in a sentence. Lucky for the pop filter. Part of the appeal of Portis was that he would step in and he'd get usage on the second unit to replace Giannis or replace Lopez and that sort of stuff. All right? He would be able to do that. And we also saw that when Middleton went to the bench, Portis's value did drop. Right, we saw that. But now Kuzma's around. So you know who can replace Giannis? Kuzma. Now, Kuzma can't replace Lopez. But that idea of we've only got three guys who can play power forward center, Giannis, Lopez, and Portis, is gone. Because Kuzma can play the four now. So that reduces the minutes upside of Portis, and it also reduces the chances of moving into 29 minutes. Because before it was Giannis or Lopez down. Now, I think it's probably more just Lopez going down that helps Portis bump up, if he's even on the team. And then the other guys, which are all deeper league players. The artist formerly known as Torian Prince was starting. He was being at least a 12-team stream guy. He will not start anymore. He'll go to a 22-minute-a-night role and maybe get 2 threes every third game. And that's not useful enough for most. Big Boom AJ Green and Gary Trent, they were getting some minutes. They were able to step up and get that extra run because, again, Khris Middleton was limited. He'd play 25 minutes. We'd have him missing a bunch of games, and those guys would step up into larger roles. So they're not going to be able to have as many opportunities to do that. And the last one there, I put that in because we cater to all leagues. We are well known, this show, across the world as being double onyx, diamond, titanium, platinum, palladium friendly. So some of you in those double onyx shares were maybe, what if the shutdown's happening and then Patrick Baldwin comes in and shoots 30%, but he blocks 2 shots and hits 4 threes a game down the stretch in my 20-man league where if we lose a week in a matchup, we have to lose a digit. And at the end of the season, whoever's got the fewest fingers loses. If you're in one of those leagues, maybe you were stashing Baldwin. But he's going to move into the Tyler Smith role of playing 2 minutes every 5 years. So, done. So, yeah, all those other guys, value is, it's down. And again, I would love your thoughts on Kuz. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Basketball season is heating up. There is no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports with over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings. PrizePicks makes it easy and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Here's how it works. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes. He only needs to throw 1 yard to win. So you pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. This week, you can look at whatever you want. But of course, it's got to be the Super Bowl. You can add NBA stuff into there as well. Plus, their Taco Tuesday promo gives you discounted player projections for even more value. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So, I can't do the thing that I have been doing and saying, if you're just joining us, hear the details, but I'll put it up anyway. Milwaukee and Washington executed a trade. We've gone through the, what side? The Milwaukee side of it. Now we need to look at the Washington side of this deal. And they're still a little bit up in the air with what they do, because I think they can still move on from Valanciunas. They could still move on from Malcolm Brogdon. I think that there's a bunch of players whose value goes up. Justin Champagnie, still a two-way player, by the way, and we haven't had him converted yet. I do think that there will be a conversion coming from him. I'm just going to double-check something. I'm just doing live check-ins here just to make sure there is no trade details going on or anything breaking as we're doing this. I'm checking Champagnie's game total. He's played 32 games, so he's got 18 left on his two-way contract. So he's got some time there. And he's played in the last couple of games. He's played 12, 15, 16, and 13 with 30 seconds in one game. So he's in that role, right? Kuzma going out, I'll dispel this part of it. I'm not telling you that Justin Champagnie is now a 28-minute-a-night player because he isn't. Kuzma going out, and people do often, and this is a blind spot in many with trades happen. They go, Kuzma's gone, so Penny must start, yeah? No, because someone came back. Right, somebody came back, and somebody is moving into the lineup, and it's Khris Middleton. Now, Middleton might get traded. They might move on from him again. That might happen. But also, if they move on from Middleton, somebody else might come back. And the other problem with Champagny is that there's two other players in Corey Kispert and Keyshawn George who also play that same position, who also are going to be on the team and also are going to get minutes. So it's something to monitor for sure. But Champagny, Kispert, George all get bumps. Also, Middleton, his body, obviously not very good, right? It's obviously in trouble. The Wizards don't need to push that. So he's not going to be coming in and playing the same Kuzma role. So there are minutes available. But all of Champagny, Kispert, Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly all gain. Because there might be 4, 5, 6 extra minutes around. But it's also the fact that Khris Middleton's going to come here. He might be traded, I don't know. But he's not playing out the season, let's be honest. He's not going to be on the team grinding it out through the 30th of March. He's not going to be doing that. His body will not allow that. They don't need him to do that. This is either a piece that they look at, well, maybe he can help us next season. Maybe he helps for a little bit in the short term. But they don't need him to be doing that this season. So Bilal is going to get to do more. Kispert, Champagny, and George are going to get to do more. Now, would I consider adding any of them? Is your Kispert or Champagny worth burning a waiver wire at this point? I don't think so. If I did anyone, it probably would be Champagny, just because he can do it in many different categories, but I feel like there's still a lot of hoops to jump through to get him there. The one to watch for you double onyx, diamond, titanium, platinum legends, palladiums, strontium, is AJ Johnson. Why? Well, you go, what? AJ Johnson, Josh. Bro's averaged 1 point a game, and I'm not sure if that's true, but it probably is because he's barely played. I'm just going to bring up AJ Johnson's numbers, actually. I think he averaged 2 points a game in Australia last season, so he's on about the same track. Let's have a look. What is AJ averaging? 2.9 points per game, 42% shooting, 0.1 steals. He has generated 20 points for the season, 7 assists, and 1 steal. There you go. Why is AJ Johnson someone to watch whose value goes up? Well, it's the Wizards. And he is a first-round pick. Shouldn't have been. He would have not been drafted in most drafts, I'm guessing. That was the one where I don't have many sources, but I have some. I don't have many sources. But what I heard about AJ Johnson is that every other team was like, why did they pick him? He wasn't on our board. What are they doing? And then what I also heard from the not from the Bucks, but from people inside the Bulk, people who told me about the Bucks, they were like, yeah, we know the draft is bad, so let's just try something. So yeah, like he's not a very good prospect, but they're a bad team. And if Jordan Poole doesn't play down the stretch, if it's Bub Carrington and Bilal and they try out what AJ Johnson does, look, let me be very clear with you. It'd be hard to be worse than Johnny Davis. I think AJ is going to get a shot. AJ is tall. He's big. He can pass a little bit. There will be random games where someone says, AJ Johnson, anything to see here? It will happen. So just keep an eye on it. But yeah, if I had to add, obviously Bilal is an ad, right? Champagny, maybe. Kispert, George, AJ, not really sure. Bub, not really impacted yet. But there's still more to play out there. And then the other one is Khris Middleton loses value. And it's the reverse of the reverse of Kuzma, because people would think that, Josh, you've got it mixed up again. He was the third option in Milwaukee, and now he can be the second option in Washington. I guess it's true, but also no. No, because he's not going to come in and play 33 minutes. He's not going to play out the season. He could have ramped up in Milwaukee. As much as I've dropped him like 5 weeks ago in Milwaukee in standard leagues, he might have a small spike, but he's not going to be playing down the stretch. That's just not going to happen, I don't think. It would be pretty silly if all of a sudden we're getting 33 minutes of Khris Middleton here every game, 7 weeks of the season. Makes no sense. So I believe Middleton loses so much. Any inkling of peripheral value for standard leagues is cooked here for Khris, is how I view this one. There were a couple of other trades, and we are going to come back and talk about them because, just for completeness. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here. It's one game, it's two teams, it's endless possibilities, but it's only one winner, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. It's predicting the first touchdown, maybe. Maybe it's calling the MVP. Maybe it's picking the coin toss. Maybe it's individual player props. Maybe it's game totals, sides, individual team totals, all that stuff is available over on FanDuel. And the live betting feature helps you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. The app is super easy to navigate. Plus, if you place that $5 bet right now and you win it, you get $200 in bonus bets, which you can use during the Super Bowl. Icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Shout out to the people who responded to my call for why is $1 called a buck. It was about deerskins. Well, didn't expect that to happen, but shout out to the people who gave me that information. I enjoyed that a lot. All right, so there were, like I said, a couple of other trades that did go down, and the next one's the only one that really has any sort of level of, any level of real sort of implication. It's Oklahoma City and New Orleans. This is the second annual Memorial New Orleans get us out of the luxury tax dump trade. Daniel Tice and a second round pick goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Pelicans receive luxury tax relief. They just don't pay the tax. That's cool. Tice had been dealing with a thumb issue. They're obviously going nowhere. The Thunder, now people might look at this and go, does this mean that they're worried about Chet returning? Maybe, but also not. Don't think so, because their 15th man was Brendan Carlson, and while Carlson showed a little bit, having just a level of insurance, so it doesn't have to be Kenrich Williams. Tice can still play. He can still play. I don't think we're adding him outside of deeper leagues, but you do that and you just get another draft pick for nothing. Cool. Why wouldn't you do it if you were old Samuel Presti? Why wouldn't you do it? Easy stuff. The impact here, though, is in New Orleans. It's Kyle Kuzma. Now, it would be easy to say, well, this really helps Yves Missi. I don't believe it does. Now, these thoughts are something that I find important to note just in any sort of factor of life. Me saying that I don't think it impacts Yves Missi is not the same thing as me saying it's bad for Yves Missi. I just don't think it changes anything. I don't think it impacts him. Why? Because Daniel Tice wasn't cutting into Yves Missi's minutes. That was not the reason that Missi was struggling. The reason that Missi's minutes were down is that the fit with him and Zion doesn't work. That was why. Nothing to do with Daniel Tice, in my opinion. I don't believe Willie Green for a second went, all right, Yves, we've just really got to play Tice, so come off, my guy. I don't think that's what he was thinking. So I don't actually think this impacts Missi at all. I don't think it makes him better. I don't think it makes him worse. What it does do is it does mean now, I think, that you can lock in as the backup center, Kyle Kuzma. I talked about him a lot through Summer League. Very impressed. He looked way better than Missi in Summer League. And his ability to shoot and protect the rim, to me, made a lot of sense next to Zion. Now, of course, it didn't happen at all. First preseason game, he was like the 18th center off the bench. I went, okay, this is done. We're not drafting him. Forget it. It's not happening. And he's barely played, except for the last 3 games. And now, with Tice dealing with a thumb issue, Makovic is the backup center. And last game, they actually played Zion, Makovic, and Missi together. I don't think you're adding Kyle Makovic in 12-team leagues. If you're in a 16-team league, yeah, you are. You absolutely are. And he will, I think, have a 24-minute-a-night run, a 2-week run at some point in the rest of the season. He will touch the edge of the top 100 for a period of time, maybe. Probably in April, but maybe. But this now moves him from below Jeremiah Robinson or below Daniel Tice, below Yves Missi, below whatever nonsense was going on. Trey Jemison, is he even still on this team? I'm not even sure. He, I believe, now slots in backup center Kyle Kuzma. So that means value is up. Yeah, we remember the name. The last trade that went down is one that is, I guess, pretty inconsequential. Houston and Boston. The Rockets receive the package. Jaden Springer, They get a second-round pick, and there is a second-round pick swap involved. So Boston just dumps Springer money savings scenario. Springer is an absolute ball hound. Shout out to ball hounds. He is a very, very good defensive player who's had some offensive issues. But nearly every time he plays, you go, all right, that's interesting. Bit of something here. And he goes to Houston with the most, second most, equal most defensive-minded coach in Ime Udoka. And your point guard depth chart, we've got a man there, obviously, in Fred VanVleet, but it's Reed Shepherd, who was very good last game. The other one's Aaron Holiday. I don't think that we need to worry about adding Jaden Springer anywhere. But what I will say this, is that getting a very defensive-minded point guard in Jaden Springer, my initial thought was, is Fred actually in a bit of trouble here? No, I don't know that. They said week to week on his ankle. That's not great. And then a day later, you trade for a defensive-minded, hard-nosed point guard. I go, ooh, okay. I'm a little more concerned now than I was 24 hours ago. Again, I don't think that is necessarily what is happening, but I'm not ignoring that. So double onyxes, deeper leagues. Springer goes from a spot where he had no chance of playing to a position where maybe he doesn't, because there is Amen and Fred and Reed and Aaron Holiday. But I think he can be ahead of Aaron Holiday pretty easily. And then we see the other stuff. It's just one it flies under the radar because of Kuzma trade, because of the Durant stuff, because of everything else that's happening. It flies under the radar a little bit, and it's definitely the least important thing that's happened so far today. But just let's keep it up. Let's keep it in your head. And that, guys, is the end of this little trade show. I will be doing a live coming up soon. And we'll see if any other stuff goes down in that. But in the meantime, hit the thumb on the video. Get ready for the trade deadline show tomorrow. Get ready for the recap show later tonight. Get your questions ready for the mailbag. But also, importantly, keep yourselves healthy. Keep yourselves safe. Keep yourselves happy. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.